Welcome back. 2 times, in fact. And there will be 3 first part in this first part of the morning. So the first third of this first part will be on monitoring, reporting, and verification, because we are addressing science context and finding in the Asia-Pacific region. We already have some information yesterday, a little bit with Beverly and with Budiman, but we will go deeper with some real innovation or some other very interesting findings. So the first keynote speech will be by Dr. Jagadish Yeluripati, Senior Scientist, Ecosystem Modeling, Group Leader, Information and Computational Science Department of the James Hutton Institute in UK. So, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Just waiting for the presentation to pop in. I think before that, I just want to say a few words about this. This project was funded 2.5 years ago by a scientific funding body in the UK called the NERC. We received around 1.4 million pounds to develop this. In the last 2 years, we spent enormous time. We have a big team here. I'm the main PA of this project, but we have a collaboration with Aberdeen University and Center for Ecology and Hydrology. The 3 institutions, we work together, and we have a much more complex team, a big team, including huge range of expertise, from the modelers to the social scientists. All together, we worked in this. It's all about developing a near real-time digital monitoring, verification, reporting system. So for the net zero. So next slide, please. Yeah. So if we know that climate change is happening, and it's one of the biggest threats mankind faces, and we are all aware that greenhouse gas emissions are responsible for this. If you look at the greenhouse gas emission trend in different countries, then it is an example from India. There is substantial increase in the greenhouse gas emission over a period of time, several decades. Major contribution come from the energy sector, and the second biggest emitter in this one is agriculture. You can see overall there is a trend, there is a slight increase in the agriculture emissions. But if you invest in other sectors, we can reduce the emissions, but actually investing in agriculture not only reduce the emissions, but also provide a lot of resilience to the future food systems. And also that's the major advantage here. And being a highly managed ecosystem, we can sequester a lot of carbon. There is a huge opportunity waiting here. Whereas in other sectors, if we invest, we can only reduce the emissions. So next slide, please. Yeah. Same story in Scotland too. These are the emissions from the Scotland. The agriculture is the 3rd biggest emitter, but it moved from 2018 goes back to 2021. Agriculture is the 2nd biggest emitter. The reason was, next slide, please. There is a lot of progress was made in several decades in all other sectors, but agriculture was lagging behind with very little effort was put in. So yeah, next slide. You can see the agriculture is hardly 1.1, but if you want to reach net zero, all the sectors need to contribute. This is the same story across in all the countries. You can see the steep curve from 1990 to 2018, and from 2018 to 2050, if you want to reach, all sectors must reduce their emissions to reach the net zero. That is not an easy task. And you can see the sharpness of this curve, actually how sharp it needs to go down. So especially we need to focus now on agriculture sector. Next slide, please. So we look at the scientific elements of it. The technical potential of the sequestration of the carbon is very significant. We have an overwhelming consensus in the scientific community. The estimates vary across, but actually there is a huge potential here to sequester from 0.9 to 1.8 petagram per carbon. So next slide, please. But the issue comes in is there are several barriers to achieve this. One of the biggest one is soil organic carbon content, and greenhouse gas emission cannot be easily measured which is a key barrier for implementing the programs in net zero. So if we want to do this, then we need a more credible, transparent, and reliable monitoring, verification, reporting system. So that should serve three purposes, actually. Because the way currently the system works across the world, the way it is estimated greenhouse gas emission at the farm level is quite different from the way it is reported at the national level. We need to harmonize these systems. Otherwise, it's going to pose problems when we go towards the net zero. That needs a more credible MRV. The other one is, please go back, yeah. The other one is the emission trading. Currently, the emission trading was jammed because of the lack of credible MRV system. And that could trace the carbon. It's not lack of MRV. There are so many MRVs exist. But MRV need to fulfill three main criteria. One is they need to demonstrate the overall savings of the carbon, the permanence of the carbon, demonstrate. The second element is the traceability of the carbon. We need to be able to trace where exactly it is. We need to go back and trace it. Currently, no MRV can do it. The third element is the accounting. Make sure that it's not duplicated. It is accounted somewhere else. This is the main basic criteria the MRV need to fulfill. The other one is to track the progress for the net zero, even at the farm level. In UK, they need to reach the farm by 2050. In Scotland, it's 2045. The farms need to reach net zero. Even in India, it's presented to be 2070. So it's not easy to reach unless we have a system that will demonstrate that the trajectory, the trend, which side we are going. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the Retina project, which we call the Retina, the major thing is to create an iterative near real-time MRV system that will estimate the greenhouse gas emissions and sequestration so that we can calculate the net carbon sequestration that's happening. And also create an end-to-end data chain from collection to processing and understanding the data and improve the visualization from the advanced modeling and decision making. Though currently the market tools work in two different ways. One is either the modeling tools or the measurement tools. They measure and they try to measure after 5 years or 10-year timeline and look at the carbon sequestration, or they monitor. They don't do anything at the field level. They monitor and demonstrate the sequestration. But actually both have the flaws. It's the difficult at this situation. So what really we try to do is to create a hybrid method. Combine both monitoring and modeling, and also bring in a real-time system by deploying the sensors at the field level. So next slide, please. Overall, the concept look like this. So we monitor by deploying the sensors at different scales. At the plot scale, we put the sensors, soil temperature, moisture, pH, and many other sensors we deploy. We get the real-time data. And at the landscape level, we have the eddy covariance measurement system. We don't need this when we scale it up, but we need this to calibrate some of the models. And at the national scale, we use the remote sensing. We connected the Sentinel 1 and 2 data to the Google engine. Then we can able to measure the management changes that is happening in the field. That is to validate that information. But all this information, and also we connected the existing prior knowledge of the soil maps, climate data, future projections, everything combined, and feed into the real-time data system that process the biogeochemical models and produce the output from 2020 to 2050. So that information would be very useful for the farmers and also the policymakers, because it's an iterative system, it continuously runs. And also the farmers can get this information. We developed an app. The app is used to give the information and also collect the information from the farmers. When we develop the system, we can collect all the biophysical characteristics from the sensors we deploy in the field. But the problem is the management information. In order to run the models, we need 3 sets of information. One is the biophysical conditions, the climate data, and the management information, what is happening in the field. So that app will capture that information. Whenever the management event happens, that will kickstart and reiterate the system so that it will reproduce. Iteratively, the models will run and predict what actually happens. The advantage of this system is that more and more it runs, more and more accurate it becomes, because we'll know more and more about each more site-specific manner. The other element is that we don't use a single model. It's a model assembly. Currently, we have 3 different models. DNDC model, which is widely regarded in biogeochemistry, and also the ECOS model and BASFOR model. Next slide, please. So this is how Retina works. We demonstrated in 2 farms in Scotland. We deployed the sensors, we created a real-time dashboard, then that used the DNEC model and goes into the app. Next slide, please. Yeah. So you can go on. So this is the Retina architecture that works in the background. So it will have an automatic detection system. That means the app will automatically detect each land parcel. Once it is detected, all the databases are already internally connected to it. So we know what is happening in the field, and the models will predict. The overall, what happens is that the models are capable of not only predicting the soil carbon and greenhouse gas emission, they also predict the yields, and also so that we can also optimize the nutrients. We can advise the farmer how we can optimize the nutrients as we get more information. And also we predict the system well before what is happening. So that means we create a digital twin in fundamentally, if you run for a long time. That means we can create multiple combinations of management practices. What is the best suited for that location we can identify. So that's a major advantage of this. Please go along. Yeah, it's almost done. So I have a demonstration of this app in that video here, but I don't have a time. So I will skip that one. Please have a look. Yeah, please. So these are some of the benefits of the Retina system. One is interactive real-time model predictions, complete data traceability, and once that real-time system have influenced the farmer behavior, because once they plow the land, they know the greenhouse gas emission, how much that come from the field. So that way we can influence the farmer, the decisions. And also at the policy level, there is a lot of lag between the data generated in the policy. So in a real-time system, we can reduce that lag. So yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. This is the app actually. I don't have a time, but if you come to me, if you are interested, I can show you how this works. Next one. Next slide, please. Yeah. After this project, we just finished that project, and we got a lot of interest from the industry and so many in Scotland and UK. So we developed that one into a startup company called the Carbon Extras, which we received the support from the Scottish Enterprise, which they gave us the money to develop, because the Carbon Extras will work on the scalability of the system. Now, next, please. So the overall Retina fulfill all the functionality necessary for monitoring, reporting, and a verification system, and accelerate the efforts towards net zero. And dynamic digital data that is generated is a huge value for the scientific community and also for the decision making. And this approach will enable flow data from the field to the end user and help the real-time decision making. Thank you very much. Sorry for running a bit long.
Thank you very much. Now you're the first one of the morning. This is the most difficult role. So thank you very much, because we need this kind of system, really, if we want the policymaker to jump in this and also the business. So, and understand what the farmers are doing and how it's happening in the farm. Thank you very much, Jagadish. So the second keynote speaker today will be Mr. Navin Vitek Oro from GIZ, German National Development Agency in India, and on circularity of bioresources for sustainable soil health and carbon sequestration.
A very good morning. I'm Naveen. I'm working with GIZ, and just a very brief about GIZ. GIZ is a not-for-profit entity under the federal government of Germany. And we try to sort of provide these global solutions at scale across the globe, yeah. So I'll be just giving the perspective of what we do in India, and also would try to open up a bit the discussions. One of the statements that the last speaker made was agriculture sector has the potential to sequester carbon. Are we really optimizing on that opportunity would be the piece of what I want to say today. So basically, if you look at the challenges in general in agricultural sector, and hence all of it relates to the soils. Last year, in fact, I don't know how many of you are well aware of it, there was a huge expenses on fertilizers in India, right? It was almost close to 3 billion euros, which is a huge, huge amount. And if you look at why is it happening, the fertilizer use is really high in India. The fertilizer response is reducing. So if you are applying more fertilizers, you're not getting the equivalent result from the soils, yeah? And why is it? If you trace back, it's all about because we are losing the potency of the soil. The soil health is really deteriorating. But if you look at the available resources, there are enough of animal waste in India. There is enough of agricultural residues in India. There is enough of organic waste in urban sectors in India. Are we optimally using it to improve the soil? And that is the piece that I would want to really open up for everyone over here. We should look at soils from a larger context, larger availability of bioresources, larger availability of a lot of these dynamics that sort of influence soil health and soil sustainability as such. So the importance of soil is really, really critical because we have to sustain soil, sustain agriculture to be able to feed the growing population in the futures. Now, this is what I was really sort of want to bring forth to everyone here. Soil cannot be seen in silos. Soil has to be seen as this entire interlinkages that you see here, right from landscape-based management of soils, because there is interrelationship between water, climate, soil. So it can't be seen in silos. You need to look at this integrated sort of resources which improves soil at the end of the day. There are a lot of these solutions which are like, if you look at sustainability of soils, you need to look at this entrepreneurship. How can sustainable soils be part of these supply chains? And of course, what I also really realized working in the sector since last almost 25 years in India is we often tend to reinvent the wheel, and there is a lot of a case to really exchange our learnings, knowledge. So we have also got this India Bioresources and Biochar Network. So I would just encourage you to be a part of that. Next, please. Yeah, you can click one more. Yeah. So on the left, you see the different kind of resources available. I won't read the numbers, but you can see there's a huge resources available. It may not be enough to provide the organic needs of all the agricultural land in India, but it is sufficient enough to at least make a significant difference. So what we have been piloting in India is to look at how these bioresources can be used in an integrated manner to improve the soils. So if you see the forest residue, any woody biomass coming from agricultural residue is converted into biochar. Animal waste is converted into bioprom and energy. There is a huge sort of volume of urban organic waste, which is now converted into compost and brought back to the agricultural soils. And also a lot of these liquid manures, Jivamritam, Panchagavya, and others. Next, please. How it is done is the next question that we have. So you look at the circularity model, right? So the whole intent here is, can we integrate enterprise models in this circularity so that the actors who are involved in the circularity have a business and some bottom line profit for which gives them the incentives to be engaged in the circularity. For example, here, the FPOs, the farmer producer organization, there's a huge network of farmer producer organizations in India. They are actually procuring the compost from the urban local bodies and then passing it on to the farmers at a margin. So the farmers get the compost at a better price, FPOs make a business out of it, and hence it is continuing business as such. Next one. So this was about the urban waste management. This is about how do we really use the animal waste into the soil to improve the soil health, right? So the government of India has promoted these biogas units where you have this household energy requirements. What happens to the waste that comes out of these biogas units? So one of the things that we also realized working with our partner, BioF, is here. They have developed this model called ICRISAT. Dr. Kote can speak more about it. Do sort of touch base with him during the break. So the whole idea is whatever waste comes out of this biogas plant, can it be enriched, converted into compost, added with rock phosphate because phosphatic fertilizers or nutrients are missing in the soil. So that sort of produces the bioprom or the prom, phosphorus-rich organic manure. And this again is done as an enterprise level. So basically the enterprise collects the slurry, processes it, and then sells it to the farmers. Next one. The third source of bioresources was all of these woody biomass that we have. So when we started doing this, we again sort of looked at the farmer producer organization. Can we build a business model around it? You know, so there are a lot of these agricultural waste from cotton stalks, pigeon pea stalks, forest sort of waste coming in. So the FPO then does all of these processes to collect the waste, process the waste, convert into biochar. But what we also realized was processing cost of biochar may not be making it a viable product for the farmers to buy. It's almost 12 rupees per kilo, which is quite high. So what we then started doing is to mix biochar with compost. So enriching or activation of biochar with compost or any other nutrient sources. And then it's sort of sold as terra preta substrate to the farmers, and then farmers apply on the farm. And this also is a business model. Next one, please. So these are the business models that we were talking about. And what it really needs to be scaled is the big question now. One thing that I was really sort of, from the experiences that we have, is we have really great sort of empirical evidences from quality research that we have done. We have great examples of how private sector has been working. We have great examples of really good pilots run by the civil society organization. Why is it not getting scaled up? So one of the things was to integrate all of this expertise, knowledge that we have to align with the government initiatives. They have the resources, they have the scale, align it with the private sector resources. So first one, of course, community-based models. Second was, can we look at additional incentives? So we are working on various ones, of course, voluntary carbon markets, but also we are now working on a project which is working on sustainable rice production, and any incentives, emission reductions that comes out of it, can it be taken under the scope 3 emissions? We really need to think hard. Don't just think about changes, but we have to really talk about food system transformation if we have to look at sustainable soils. The last one, share, exchange, don't reinvent the wheel. And I'll take a pause here. I'll stop here. I saw the 1 minute card from there. So thanks a lot. And the last one was all about continuity from the last session. Can we develop a remote sensing based methodology for assessing soil organic carbon? So we have been piloting this in Africa and India. In Africa, we have achieved up to 10%, 90% of efficiency. In India, it's 70% efficiency. The challenge being the more quality data that you have, the algorithm is better, and you can have a better remote sensing based solutions. So I would really invite any other organizations who have experiences, let's come together, and can we further sort of build on these kind of remote sensing based monitoring systems. I'll take a pause here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We are ready to help in the 4 per mil, and we are working already with GIZ. We have developed a community of practice, and part of our platform is dedicated to that. And Claudia and Samuel in the room here, they are working on it also. So ready to bring our brick to the wall, no problem. And if you read the book, you will see that we are looking for not change and transformation, we are looking for evolution, which is really something that make the change. Thank you very much. So now we'll go to I would say after the keynote, the presentation. So we will call Mr. Falguni Ganguly. Is it there? Yes, please. Lead speaker, Digital Green, India, on MRV approach to support data-driven decision-making for smallholder farmers in Bihar, India, a case study. So typically the things that you are calling also. And sir, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning to all. And thank you to the organizer for giving us the opportunity to present our work here. My name is Falguni. I know this name is somewhat unorthodox for a male in India, but I cannot help you with that. So I work in Digital Green, and Digital Green is a global not-for-profit organization. It works in Southeast Asia and Africa. And in India, we are working across 6 states. Our study is on MRV approach to support the data-driven decision-making for smallholder farmers in Bihar. Next one. So according to the Ministry of Chemical Fertilizers Annual Report 2021-22, fertilizer production has doubled in India. And as per the same report, the consumption of fertilizer in Bihar has increased more than 10 times in the last 3 decades. And the lack of awareness and lack of availability of timely advisories leads to this increase in use of fertilizers, leading to degradation of the environment as well as increase in GHG emission. digital tools, as we believe that digital tools have potential to offer innovative solutions, MRV is something that can help farmers in data-driven decision-making. Our study aims to explore the potential of MRV and offering climate-smart agriculture advisories by utilizing the data that we have gathered meticulously from the ground. So Digital Green in Bihar has been working with the Bihar State Rural Livelihood Mission, popularly known as Jivika, for over a decade. And there we are promoting adoption of sustainable practices that can, in the end, reduce the ill-scale emission. We are promoting evidence-based emission reduction practices and providing an MRV platform where the farmers recording their data and the field-level extension workers are verifying it and feeding the data into a digital tool for further analysis. On the basis of the analysis that's coming up from the data that we have collected, the farmers are receiving advisories that is supporting their decision-making. Not only that, the analysis has potential to open avenues to traders for direct marketing. There are businesses who are not being able to cut down their emissions. They are turning towards carbon offsetting. The data analysis, and if this data can help the farmers to avail this new avenue of income generation. This data can also help financial institutions, banks, and insurances to provide service and on a favorable terms to the farmers if the farmers is demonstrating any sort of resilience. Next one. So this is how we have created this MRV platform. To create this MRV platform, we started with partner consultation and narrowing down on the data set, on the data needs. We created a digital tool. This tool was field tested, and on the basis of the field experience, as well as feedbacks from different experts, the tool was updated and then it was deployed in the field. Around 275 FLWs were trained to use this digital tool during the project. Next one. So very quickly, this is where we are currently working in. We are working in 11 districts in Bihar, and we have a ambitious target of reaching to 200,000 farmers with video advisories and around 5,000 farmers with very specific various plot specific advisories. Next one. So we started this pilot from one block with 254 farmers in 2021 and progressively reaching to 25,000 farmers in 2023, covering both rice and wheat crop during the project duration. So here are some very top level findings that we have from the data that we have collected. This table, this is the data for the wheat data that we have collected. The table shows that there is a percentage variance of nitrogen used by farmers against the recommended dosage on the basis of the showing time. In case of timely showing, that is still November 30th, the usage is 50% higher. And if as the timing of the showing delays, the usage is increased by 331%. Next. This is the graphical representation of around 14,000 wheat farmers highlighting mean nitrogen usage against the showing time and the yield. The graph shows that the delay in showing, the nitrogen use increased, although there is very little difference in the yield. Next. So this is how we are thinking of the data that we are collecting. We are thinking of two primary uses of the data. Firstly, the data will be used to develop a tier 2 model for GHG emission estimation. Tata Cornell Institute is leading that part, who is our technical partner, and the work is in progress. And secondly, the farmer scorecard, as you can see in the picture. This is a tool that will offer plot-specific tailored recommendation based on farmers' practices. The scorecard is developed in local language. In this case, it is Hindi. Include farmers' profile and comparison of the yield, showing time, and nitrogen fertilizer usage to the village average, along with the recommended crop showing dates and amount of nitrogen fertilizer. The usage data is color coded, with green indicating correct usage and red indicating there is some areas that need to be that need improvement.
Can you go to the conclusion?
Sorry?
Time is finished.
Okay, just so we have faced some challenges in this project. Convincing the partners as well as the farmers on MRV concept was a big challenge. Data collection itself was challenge in terms of cost, in terms of the timeliness, in terms of the complexities. And also there is a challenge that we faced is the most important is how farmers can be incentivized for reporting the correct data, as because GHG emission is not of their primary concern. And this thing also leads to the adoption hurdles of different advices that we are sharing with them. So, I mean, we also have some learnings, but if the time is over, then I'll pause here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We can understand your work and how difficult it is to convince farmers that they have to go for these kind of things. But I'm sure that after a while, like all the new innovation for the farmers, when they get use of it, they will not be able to go without it. So that's a challenge, how we can convince them to be able to make them more than useful for them, indispensable. Thank you. So now we have somebody online, Beatrice, that's right. So we have Dr. U. Surendran, Principal Scientist of Head Land and Water Management Research Group, Center for Water Resource Development and Management in India, on comparative analysis of the existing model of carbon credit estimation towards developing a framework for estimation of carbon credit in agriculture. Doctor, are you online?
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction and also the opportunity. Somehow I missed it physically to attend the program because of the Nipah virus here. So just I'll have a brief outlook about what are the available existing models, even though morning we have looked into 2-3 presentations in similar line. And basics, I will not go into that because already it has been discussed yesterday and today. So here what we looked at is what are all the existing carbon calculators across the globe. So there are few which I have listed down, even though we have few presentations earlier. But just look at it, this some of the things are like Cool Farm Tool, Exact based on FAO, then AgriCalc, Farm Carbon Toolkit, Farm Doc, ACE Calculator, and so on. So many are there. So we discussed about actually, initially when we started the program for the government of Kerala, we have gone through all this existing models and how, what are all the pros and cons, everything we looked and what is the data requirement and how it can be implemented at the field scale or at a regional scale or at a state level or at a national level. So each one has its pros and cons. So I will not go into the details. If some of you are interested, I'll share this slides. And Exact, it is also somewhat comparatively easy to use, and even then it is also has some limitations when you come into the field level measurements. So if you look at then what we have decided is we need to create our own such kind of tools to capture the local issues as well as how to achieve this sustainability or net zero emission. So for in that case, we have gone for a few studies which I'll be presenting here, and few like already there has been published like how to measure the carbon emissions for different water and nutrient management strategies at the field level. So few of the papers I've shown here for vegetables, then similarly for the perennial crops, because Kerala, if you look at it, we have a lot of crops like coconut, arecanut and all, which will have a different emission pattern. Similarly, the temperature increase, how it is affecting then the water management practices, especially the irrigation management practices, because if you look at the Kerala conditions, we have almost 19% only irrigated, so rest of the things are rain-fed. So under such conditions, at a different conditions, how it is getting affected, we have studied in the field level, measured the carbon emissions through the CFLAX equipment as well as the alkali trap method, and also through eddy covariance flux towers in different crops like rice, black pepper, cauliflower, cabbage, cowpea, brinjal, watermelon, then coconut, arecanut, like that. So then with the different nutrient management, how it is differing. Similarly, if the temperature is increasing, for example, if you increase the temperature by 2 degrees, what will happen? So that also we have simulated the conditions in the field using the poly houses, and then 2 degree, 4 degree, like that. So under such future scenarios also how it will be emitted, so that this database will help to model accurately the results what we are expecting. And next one is like the micro irrigation technology. Suppose if you want to adapt, for example, in the case of different crops, if you go for the irrigation management, how that is influencing the carbon emission scenario. So that has also been studied with the field crops, like all the crops I have mentioned. This is one of the sample which I am showing in sugarcane, and which results actually when you implement such kind of water saving technologies, it is not only increasing the crop productivity, water productivity, and energy savings, but improved in the emission, means reduction or sequestering more carbon. So similarly, we attempted for the residue management, especially with the case of sugarcane, how this trash shredding will be helpful in maintaining the soil health and improving the soil carbon stocks and build-up of carbon. And combining with this, again, we need to go for some modeling strategies, especially as mentioned in the initial first speaker with the DNDC, ROC, DSAT. So many of these models we try to couple, and so that for this humid tropical climatic scenario, and as well as the semi-arid regions of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, we have gone with a few studies and come out with the results, including the remote sensing based images as well as the field level measurements. So how that can predict the crop yield as well as the carbon assimilation or sequestration potential. So that has been validated with the Ediflux towers in one of the locations at Nilgiris. Finally, what we could understand that whatever the existing models, there were some kind of overestimation or underestimation with respect to the emissions or the sequestration potential, whatever we call. So we need to localize the scenarios. So in that, there are 3 options as per the IPCC. So we coupled this Tier 2 and Tier 3 approaches, and we are now working with Niti Aayog also to how that can be done in a pilot scale. And Kerala being a pioneer in this, even though India has planned for 2070 as the net zero emissions. So here Kerala, we are thinking about 2050. So for that, each panchayat level, we are planning for the net zero achievement by 2050. For that, CWRM is supporting with the carbon calculator. So this is at the local self-government departments level. We are mapping the carbon and giving the suggestions for the net zero emissions. For that, such kind of tools are being utilized. So these are all the technologies which we are proposing and which is being carried out at here. And initially for not only in the agriculture sector, it is mapping the entire sector so that whatever the suggestions or the possibilities to reduce the emissions can also be suggested. So these are all few of the models. So with this, I'll be stopping here and happy to interact any questions or there are clarifications. And similarly, if someone is interested also, we are happy to collaborate with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for respecting the time. Very sorry for that. All the presentation, except if the speakers do not allow so, but all the presentation will be shared and will be available. We'll put them on the website of the 4per initiative later on. And we are recording also the whole session, so all the session will be cut in pieces and put on our YouTube channel in order for you, if you want to just do it during your leisure time, if you have nothing else to do, or if you want to share with your colleagues. So there are a lot of information, a lot of things interesting on the MRV, a lot of model and tools that are developed. We are working at the moment at the 4per initiative on trying to make a kind of small application that could help any people that look for a tool, MRV tool, to find the right one according to the purpose of the user. So we'll talk about that later on. It's supposed to be ready by the end of the year. So the last speaker for the day, because we were expecting somebody online who didn't turn out. Okay, so this is Mr. Praveen Pankajakand. I am right, Praveen? Sorry, I just very bad in name because my one is too short, and so I'm not used of the long name.
Almost there.
So you are Vice President, Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, Head of Coprin Al Lab at Coprin Technology India.
Thank you, Dr. Pallu. So my name is Praveen Pankajakshan. So Paul was not very far away. Basically, like my background is computer science and applied mathematics. So I'm more focused. I mean, I have a passion for agriculture personally as a farmer also. So what I'll try to address today is what are those, for me, looking at it from a larger perspective, I wanted to know how to kind of look at all the different beautiful work that you're all doing, but looking at from a perspective of how do we actually like measure it, but at a larger scale, right? So, so my lab actually works on satellite imaging and AI. So I'll just, I'm just using one particular case study as an example. Here, it's a case of paddy. I'll not go into the details of crop residue and burning issues that we have. It's really a burning issue in India of the residue. But you know, there is also not only the issue of putting it back into the soil, but also into the, you know, as revenue, there is possibility, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So what I want to know is that we have certain models like the earlier speaker was speaking about the DNDC model, but this is more on remote sensing. So it's actual measurement of data from satellite images. And I'll very quickly talk about what are those satellite data that we use. But we want to actually like use the results that's coming out of it for carbon accounting or any kind of auditing that you're doing. Now, one of the major challenges that we are facing is most of the accounting that's going on right now is field visits, you know, so we can't do away with field visits. It's necessary as well. We want to see how to use a mixture of both, right? Next slide. Sorry. Yeah, so I have taken the Indo-Gangetic Plain, but specifically Punjab as a case study, and I'll just briefly show you what's happening on that front. Next slide. But you can see that this is the time frame that I've chosen is you know, between mid-September till end November. We've used actually like 3 satellite images at least, you know, for doing this studies, 3 different modalities. But we have also recently explored hyperspectral data as well. So the 2 major satellites that we use is Sentinel-2, which is an optical data. As everyone knows, Sentinel-1 is radar. We have also used the VIRS from MODIS. These gives the thermal anomaly, so to detect fire hotspots, right? So that's also important. And then I'll also show a little bit of ground validation. Next slide, please. I think there are some animations which I lost. I think for reasons of for transferring it, I compressed it as PDF. But I'll not go into the details of the methodology. But the most important thing, one of the biggest challenges that we faced when we were actually like looking at stubble burning is how to identify regions where actual paddy cultivation is happening, right? So we use actually, you know, a framework which is running on AWS and cloud computing end to end. So we use the Sentinel-2 optical data, the spectral signature of paddy. Sentinel-1, the spectral signature of paddy is very, very significant because the backscatter coefficient of Sentinel-1 helps us in identifying regions of paddy. So that's one actually important point. We identify also the land use and land classification. So one of the major things which people do is they just say that land use, land classification is urban area versus forest and everything. But for us, it's very, very important to know where agriculture is growing, right? So it's necessary to do the agri layer mask first. And on top of that, we find out regions where paddy is growing. right? I'll not go into the details of it. There's a lot of math into it, but this is just from, this, we have also deployed it not only in India, but also this is, for example, in California County. You can see two different, we are also doing like, for example, effect of drought studies and everything on, farmer behavior. So this is two different scenarios where 2021 and 2022, we see the reduction in rice productions, the same area, right? Left is 2021, right is 2022. The pink areas is overlaid on top of the Google satellite data, the Google satellite data to just show you which are the regions. Pink areas shows the rice area. The non-pink areas is, where it has actually gone away, right? Next slide, please. Yes. Yeah, I'm almost done. So the most important thing is that we are also using hyperspectral data. Once we do paddy, then between seasons, the most challenge is that the season is short. Farmers have to switch quickly to the season. We detect stubble using hyperspectral data, so that can be detected. Next slide. I'll be really quick. And then we estimate regions where there is risk of fire. So this is done using the thermal anomalies. Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is just areas which are mostly like having the fire anomalies, fire occurrences. So we find Punjab region having the most. Next slide, please. And this is the burnt area, right? This is my results slide. So what you see in the white area is where we can actually detect also the burnt regions which are having residues. So we detect the paddy, then we detected the rice, then we detect the burnt areas. And the next one. And we also, yeah, you can go to the next slide. We also did some field visits. So these are actually actual field, so you see the burnt area, but we can also see it on the satellite image, which is supposed to be an animated one. Yeah, I think I'll be done here, but I'll just to conclude, what I wanted to also give an idea is that while field visits are important, it can be supplemented with satellite data as well. We used 4 different satellites, Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2, the VIRS data and hyperspectral data. I'll be happy to go into the details as well on all of this when needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Praveen. We can see that really satellite can help us in the future to really work with farmers and see what they are doing. I mean, when they're doing the right practices or when they are doing the wrong practices. I want to thank also Praveen for his help. He was the one behind the computer to help me and us about the posters and collecting the posters and collecting the abstract. We can have a clap for Praveen for this work. Thank you. So, after all those figures, all those drawing and all those computer and satellite, let's see a little bit more about the functional mechanism. So, Mangi, you are with us?
Yes, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Dr. Mangi Laljat is the Global Research Program Director, Resilient Farm and Food System in ICRISAT, where we will be tomorrow. And he will make his presentation this morning in behalf of TAAS, Trust for Advancement in Agriculture Science in India, about regenerative agriculture for soil health, food and environment security. So it was a seminar organized by TAAS in June 2021. So ML, you have the floor.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. So as Paul indicated, this is a joint presentation by myself and Dr. Paroda based on, that seminar. I'll be talking on this regenerative agriculture, how that is helping in terms of building the resilience. And I would like to take you to the nexus. I think we see the agriculture, industry, and climate nexus, which is a problem. And I would like to take you to 150 years back when we started agriculture 1.0 and industry 1.0, the kind of mechanization, sort of mechanization started. We continued, and then we entered into the agriculture 2.0 and industry 2.0. Where electrification started, then the electronics era, in the agriculture 3.0 and industry 3.0. And where we are now is the era of intelligence, where industry 4.0, agriculture 4.0. But I think in this period, in this era of the agriculture 3.0 and 4.0, we have done a lot in terms of the environmental degradation. And in this period, over 60 years, the anthropogenic climate change has reduced the global agricultural total factor productivity by about 21%, which is enormous. And if you talk about agriculture or agri-food systems contribution to the greenhouse gas emission, it's a 1/3. I mean, it's just not 14%, 13%, but the system as a whole got 1/3 of the total, 18 gigatons of the carbon dioxide equivalent emitted annually. And if we talk about India, the every ton of the carbon dioxide equivalent emission costs $86 to Indian economy, which is enormous. And India is the most impacted country in terms of climate change. Now we are heading to the agriculture 5.0 and industry 5.0. And I think that's where we need to bring the synergy between agriculture and industry and address the climate nexus. This is just to reiterate, the urgency for the action on the climate crisis. I think it was highlighted in COP27. We have no time to lose. We are approaching the tipping point, and governments have started taking action. So the government of India, the Ministry of Agriculture, had a brainstorming, inviting all the key stakeholders, in July for a couple of days, and brainstorming on how to go about the climate resilient agriculture, which is a good initiative. And we also have the global commitment to achieve the sustainable development goals. And we have left with only 7 annual harvests to go. So I think we need to move faster, not only for stopping the degrading the natural resources, but also regenerating our natural resources for a secured future. And for that, regenerative agriculture is something very, very important, which is a prominent alternative seeking to transform the food systems and repair the ecosystem services, which uses the soil conservation as an entry point to regenerate and contribute to the multiple provisioning, regulating, and supporting the ecosystem services, and not only to enhance the environmental but also social and economic dimensions of the sustainable food system. There are many, many principles and practices when we talk about regenerative agriculture. So conservation agriculture, no-till, cover crops, or the intercropping, all those aspects are there in terms of regenerative agriculture. But the issue is we have a lot of discourses of regenerative agriculture. And I took this from one of the paper came early this year. There are 9 discourses. There may be more discourses, which are really, creating a problem and making the regenerative agriculture vulnerable to the co-optation and greenwashing and diluting its transformative potential because of the poor tensions created because of those discourses. Tensions related to genealogy and holism, equity and power, definition and departure. We indulge into definitions. I think we need to have a strategy to address those tensions on the regenerative agriculture. And from that perspective, we need to have a regenerative agriculture discourse coalition, which can be a common neutral platform for learning, for capacity development, for collective wisdom and action. The platforms like 4/1000 could be, the discourse coalition of solutions. We need a system-based approach with a multi-criteria analysis, not only looking at the yield, but all the ecosystem services and other aspects. Also a well-defined theory of change at different levels, local, subnational, national level, bridging the knowledge and capacity gap. And I think we need to get away from the silver bullet and one size fits all, based investments. More of a science evidence-based targeting and investment is important. And also most important aspect, integrating the social and behavioral science communication. No more apprehension or perceived risk-based approach. We need to have the reality check. So for that, we need to have a continuum of discovery to delivery strategy for regenerative agriculture. And from that perspective, we need to have the quality science. We need to have strategic and complementing partnership, people coming together at one platform, a greater and pooled investment, not only the governments, but all the actors, and one health focus approach, production to consumption continuum. And finally, the science of scaling or science of delivery is something very, very important. I think that's a kind of approach we need to have. There are challenges in mainstreaming the regenerative agriculture because most of our research and development has been component centric, which are creating problem. There are trade-offs. We need to see the trade-offs, like farm profitability and ecosystem services. Where do we converge? And I think from that perspective, I put together an agenda for discovery to delivery of regenerative agriculture. So the first one is one size doesn't fit all. We can have the common principles, but I think we are dealing with the diversity of the farming system, farmer circumstances, which need a tailor-made approach. Tailor-made approach that integrates genetic, ecological, and socio-economic innovations, information, and considering the whole farm and the household issues. When we talk about regenerative agriculture, I think we need to think about breeding crop varieties for regenerative agriculture. And our colleagues been developing the toolbox for designing sustainable farming systems, so those can be used. Now, what to target where? I think that is something important. I think there is a lot of advancement in terms of the geospatial science, where we can target what crop types are where, and then we can see how can promote the regenerative agriculture, having the legumes, and how can we tap into the power of biology through biological nitrogen fixation or biological nitrification inhibition, which can contribute to the soil health and the addressing the climate crisis and fertilizer crisis. And there's a lot of potential in this paper, which led by Dr. Lada, came out in 2022. How much is the potential? Even grain legume alone can have the 35 teragrams of the nitrogen fixed annually through biological nitrogen fixation. We need bundled solution and phased, in that process, phased build on approach. We have to harness the power of biology. We need to have biobanks for regenerative agriculture, for the soil to the human gut microbiome interactions. Also, we need to harness the power of digital tools. And we've been talking about digital public infrastructure, which is very, very critical for building resilience. And now, in the G20, there was a decision, I think one of the decisions on DPI, we need next generation climate services. And we've been working on many of those aspects, and system science-based, evidence-based policy and investment are something important from that perspective. Also, we need to make a move from the microbe or plant level to the landscape level. I think that's the approach we need to have, if we talk about regenerative agriculture or addressing the climate crisis, which is a holistic and integrated approach at the three levels, the farm, landscape, and the entire food system level. That's what is really required. We've been working on those regenerative landscapes, and this is an example from the Central Indian landscape where we've been working, and I'm happy to say that yesterday, based on this work, we got a UNDP Mahatma Award for Biodiversity 2023. Just yesterday, they announced based on this work, and this is very, very innovative work. I think where we see the income have gone up by 3x, water tables have came up from 26 meters to 4.5 meters. The emission intensity, is reduced from 0.14 to 0.06. We are, tipping, approaching a tipping point on the neutrality. Livelihoods have improved, cropping intensity, the arresting the land degradation, many of those aspects. So I think that's something important. And from that perspective, I think we need to have, if we really talk about that nexus, I think the resilient agriculture and vibrant industry. And that's where the synergy for climate action through cropping carbon, previous session, everybody was talking about cropping carbon or carbon credits to achieve those neutrality commitments. And I think agriculture can provide larger carbon offsets, which can benefit the industry, and industry can benefit the agriculture through ecosystem services. There's a lot of market for the carbon, which can create a pull factor for adoption of the regenerative agriculture practices. But I think we need to do a good job in terms of valuation of the ecosystem services and designing the payment for the ecosystem services. And that really needs a lot of approaches, tools, techniques, methods, protocols, harmonized ones, so that we can go on that one. And there's a large market size, and there are the products coming. Low carbon rice is already in the market. So I think things are happening. And we need to define the business models and market opportunities for regenerative agriculture, products, as well as the carbon markets, and that need a comprehensive assessment for the consumer perception and preferences, the market size at the local level or the national or regional level, international level, and the entrepreneurship opportunities for the agriculture produce and the carbon markets from regenerative agriculture. We also need to have the capacity development. We talk about capacity development. I think but we need much more than that. So the confidence building and consensus building is something important, which go much beyond the capacity development. And that need a new cadre of regenerative agriculture, community of practitioners, and the centers of excellence on regenerative agriculture living labs. I think we got a couple of those living labs at ICRISAT. We set up for the drylands, and we got a dryland academy for that capacity and consensus development. Science evidence-based policy and investment is something very, very important. And I cite this example of conservation agriculture, how it's benefiting, which is regenerative agriculture. But I think optimization of those conservation agriculture or regenerative agriculture requires attention to the location-specific performance, which is something very, very important. But if you put together this one from a policy perspective, and we talk about the agri-food systems, we got a subsistence agriculture, we got conservation agriculture, we got conventional agriculture. Now, subsistence and conventional are contributing negatively to the sustainable development goals, where conservation agriculture or regenerative agriculture got a positive linkages with many of the sustainable development goals directly or indirectly. Now, on those, very specific on the recommendations coming out from the regenerative agriculture for soil health, food, and environmental security conference, I took only 5 of those, and I think they are important. And the first one is change of the people's mindset is very, very critical. And for that, creating awareness and bridging the knowledge and capacity gap at all the levels are important. And that's what we need at this course coalition. We need a paradigm shift from the crop to cropping system to integrated farming systems approach at landscape and eco-regional scale. I think plot level approach or the plant level approach or microbe level approach is not going to take us in the transformation. I think transformation needs a systemic approach, and the system thinking is something very, very important. I think we need a national mission on regenerative agriculture. We have to strengthen the research on the regenerative agriculture with a focus on the One Health, because it's just not the food security, but I think health is also very, very important. And the carbon credits, I think we need to have the harmonized methods, tools, and protocols and policies around the carbon credit. And the government of India have taken initiatives on those carbon credits or green credits. Recently, they have issued the notifications on those. So there's a lot of good work going on, and I think we see a good future in future. But I think regenerative agriculture can help all of us in addressing many of those challenges. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you very much, Emil. Thank you for that very complete presentation. And I think this webinar seminar was a very good meetings, and the findings are very interesting. The recommendation as well could be applied not only in India but everywhere. Thank you very much. And we reached the same conclusion that you, that there were a problem with the definition of regenerative agriculture. That's why we work on the contribution to this definition by our scientific and technical committee. And I think that we reached some conclusions that are in common. Thank you. So now we will have the pleasure to welcome Dr. Sheetal Sharma, Senior Scientist, Soil Science Research Lead Digital Tool, Sustainable Impact Department of IRI, International Rice Research Institute in India. And she will talk to us about from sustainable to regenerative agriculture, vision and approaches for smallholder farmers. Thank you. The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you so much. A very good morning to everyone.
You have 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you. A very good morning to everyone. So my colleague and friend Emil talked about the broader aspects of regenerative agriculture. I will touch base on what regenerative agriculture means for a smallholder farmer and how we can move towards it. Next slide, please. I think I can go quickly through this slide, because currently what we are trying to address is we are trying to increase the food production to feed the 9 billion people without impacting the environment. We want to enhance the nutrient use efficiency through soil management while also producing the quality food. We want to bring resilience to increase climate variability and regulate climate through reduced greenhouse gas emissions while also maximizing soil carbon sequestration. And in addition to that, what we want to do also is we want to have a better understanding, management, and conservation of soil biodiversity to enhance the overall ecosystem services. Next slide, please. There is an increasing call internationally to reverse the direction of travel of the global agriculture from degenerative to regenerative approaches. Now, regenerative agriculture, as mentioned by my previous speaker, is nothing but it is a system of principles and practices that generate agriculture products, sequesters carbon, and also enhances the biodiversity at the farm scale. Now, when I say farm scale, it doesn't mean the plot scale, but at a landscape scale. What we are looking at is to strengthen the health and vitality of the soil farm. We don't do any harm to our land, rather improve it. use technologies to build the soil health and reduce carbon losses. Next slide, please. So why is the need for this transition? So if we look at this paper from 2012, K et al. In Nature Communication, and I also remember one of the paper in 2003 from JK, we are already approaching stagnant yields, especially in major food grains. We are adding more and more input, but there is no yield increase coming out of it. So what we need currently is we need to increase the soil health and the fertility of our farmlands. We also need sustainable livelihoods. We need integration of livestock, which is kind of phasing out from our agriculture system in the current scenario. We need to resilience to climate change and overall boost the farm profitability. Next slide, please. Now, what we are doing at IRI is, first of all, we need to identify and generate data on how different soils, especially in these tropical areas, will behave to these systems, not only at a plot scale, but at a landscape scale. Though we generate data at the plot scale at our experimental field, it is very important to go out and work with the farmers and look at the landscape scale approaches. So we are trying to include and increase the use of bio input to enrich the soil, finding out site-specific, field-specific, land-specific inputs that can be produced locally from the local materials. Identification of these low-cost site-specific technologies will be the key to scale regenerative agriculture with the farmers. And we also need to identify digital tools that can help to take these learnings to the end users, the farmers, or even the extension workers who can then convey it to the farmers. So we need ICT-based tools, not only for MRVs, but also to convey the better practices to the farmers. Next slide, please. What we are looking at is a roadmap where we move from degenerative agriculture system where we were doing conventional agriculture and specifically talking about rice fields, conventional flooding of the rice fields, indiscriminate use of chemicals and fertilizers in an aim to produce more and more from these systems. And we want to reduce the harm by following sustainable agriculture. So we brought in technologies like alternate wetting and drying, recommended fertilizers, doses, also site-specific nutrient management principles were developed. But now is the time that we move from reduced harm to enhance the possibilities, enhance the ecosystem services towards more regenerative agriculture system. So while we do alternate wetting and drying, we also want to improve the overall soil health, which can help in increased water percolation, soil moisture, water recharge. While we do site-specific nutrient management, we also want to integrate soil management that can help to improve the overall carbon in the soil and thus improve the overall ecosystem services. Next slide, please. Some of the key findings I'm sharing over here is that with the continuous use of integrated management systems, the soil properties have started to improve. And even if we are following alternate wetting and drying, what we found that the number of irrigations that were required in the regenerative systems were much less than what we were following in the systems where we were not following regenerative agriculture. The yields have also shown improvement. However, the crops and varieties responded differently to these systems. Mustard was highly susceptible to aphid attack under these systems. Mentha was highly suitable, while indigenous rice varieties like Kala Namak and Kalmega varieties, along with the Basmati rice, actually responded better to these systems. So low input responsive rice varieties are better suited, and we are trying to screen a number of rice varieties to be optimum for these systems in future. Next slide, please. As I was saying that we need to talk about smallholder farmers, while we were talking about what scientists can do, the farmers have already started to see that they need to improve the health of their farms. I'm sharing experiences of 3 key farmers with whom I had a chance of interaction, but also working with them. One of the farmers from Mirzapur, UP. Now, Mirzapur has traditionally been a rice wheat system. He has tried to develop an integrated farming systems with inclusion of legumes, but also adding a lot of organic materials into his farming practices. He also bought back his livestock, which he has before let go. And now he is trying to build a farm which is sustainable in itself, doesn't need inputs from outside. But one thing that he shared with us is that doing is not enough. We also need to send the messages or build capacities of others, because if it is at the farm level, regenerative agriculture probably may not work or may collapse. It has to be a combined effort of the communities. So he himself is going on the cycle to the farmers, his fellow farmers, and trying to educate them on the practices that can be taken under the regenerative agriculture. Next slide, please. Another farmer, Anubhav Dubey, he started to diversify and moved from rice wheat cropping system to cultivation of dragon fruit in Mirzapur, UP. And he has been coordinating with the national institutes like KVKs, but also helping build capacities of farmers in his region. He also mentions that the role of FPOs that can be played. And if we really want to scale regenerative agriculture, the community-based approach, like bringing in farmers together as an FPO, can really work. Next slide, please. Another farmer, an interesting case from Jalna, Maharashtra. Can you just click for all the slides? Yeah. So this is a region where they receive very less rainfall. There is always a drought. And in 2003 and 4, the KVK organized demonstration over there, and they started to work on rainwater harvesting. The farmers realized that this could be something that can help them to improve not only their water availability, but also to bring in diversification. So they started to work on developing a village level water budget, which started with meeting with the villages, participatory data collection, recording rainfall, calculating deficit and excess, and then planning the cropping pattern and suggesting the water use for irrigation along with bringing in diversification. Next slide, please. I'll quickly go through these slides. And then they also prioritize that whatever water will be available extra, how it will be used. Next slide, please. And what they found and what they were able to achieve, they were able to improve the soil moisture. They were also able to increase the overall crop productivity, inclusion of more crops. They were only taking one kharif rice crop, but now they have diversified to a lot of other crops, and an overall increase in income and livelihood. Next slide, please. But this was not only through their individual effort. They got a lot of support and recognition, which helped them to build a landscape level system, a village level system where all the farmers came together and developed this regenerative agriculture system. One thing I think I would like to mention is use of artificial intelligence. So it can clearly play a role in scaling regenerative agriculture, making it more efficient by cataloging greater details, creating recommendations for the solution, refining algorithms, creating new innovations. Next slide, please. There are still a lot of gaps that we need as a scientist to study: input-related emissions, process-related emissions, emissions and soil carbon sequestration from the entire production system, not only from the soil or not only from the farm, and emissions of specific crops within the complex, spatially diverse crop rotation systems. Next slide, please. So it thus leads to a win-win scenario, not only at the farm level where he has improved productivity, a more efficient use of income, reduced erosion, increased income, but also as at a society level where we see improved water quality, stronger food system, reduced environmental impacts, and also climate change mitigation. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. So if you look at the vision for a smallholder farmer, transitioning to regenerative agriculture is to create a holistic and a system that enhances resilience, restores ecosystem health overall, improves the livelihood, but also fosters community and knowledge sharing. That's my last slide. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And you're right, we need to think about systems. That's very important. And I also noticed what you recommend about having farmers working in organization. That's also something that we propose, and we welcome the farmers organization in the 4 Family Initiative as well. Thank you very much. So after those two very important and very important keynotes, so I would like to call now the presentation. We have a presentation by Professor Hemong Kai from Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science, China. He could not come, but he sent a video of 5 minutes. So, Beatrice,
hello everyone. My name is Andong Cai from Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science. It's my honor to join the conference. My topic is about soil organic carbon and soil health from long-term experiments in China. As we all know, soil health is the ability of soil to sustain terrestrial ecosystem productivity, biodiversity, and environmental services. Health soil for a health life. Soil health include many aspects. My research is about soil organic carbon. So I think soil organic carbon is an important index for soil health because the function of soil organic carbon include climate change, soil fertility, and crop production, and so on. In China, there are two networks. First is a chemical fertilizer experiments, and the second is national soil and fertilizer networks. There are about 16 sites, include different soil types and different crops. This is the map. For each size, there are many treatments, such as follow, control, chemical plus manure, chemical plus straw, and so on. We have finished a big database, include soil, crop, and climate. How to achieve this goal from the long-term experiments? For agriculture in China, the soil organic carbon average is 37.4. If the soil organic carbon increase 4 per mile, the soil organic carbon need increase 0.15. For upland, the x-axis is carbon input. The y-axis is soil organic carbon change. This is 6 experiment sites. From the result, we can see that when the carbon input is 3 0.2. The soil organic carbon will increase 1.5. This means we will get the goals for the padding. The carbon input is 2.7. This is all. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this presentation. That's one of the few presentations we have from China. So thank you, Professor. So now we'll have the pleasure to give the floor to Susan Reinders. Dr. Susan Reinders is the head of International Priority Program Soil and Climate in INRAE, the French National Research Institute in France. And she will make a presentation on the way onward towards a soil carbon international research consortium in the line of the 4 per mil strategic objective. Suzanne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paul. I'm really honored to be here, first of all. So I'm Susan Reinders. Next slide, please. And what I'm going to talk about is about that Soil Carbon International Research Consortium. Well, the whole history started with Jean-François Souzana, our Vice President for International Affairs, who had a first European project called CESAP. Many of you may know about it. And this follow-up project I'm leading really aims at render the Soil Carbon International Research Corporation really operational. So we are funded by the European Commission until August 2025. Next slide, please. We have 7 European partners. Next slide, please. 5 regional nodes plus Europe. So we have someone from the 4 per mil initiative, a representative in Brazil, for instance, Beata Madari. We have someone in Africa with FARA, the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. Concerning the Asia-Pacific region, well, we have a node in CSIRO, in Australia, and also at SFRI in Vietnam, in collaboration with the... So this is our consortium. As you can see, it's a short consortium with those regional nodes. Next slide, please. So how do we come from this project to the RC itself? So I just want to stress the objectives of the Soil Carbon Initiative. It's to support the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, and also to collaborate with other initiatives, including the 4 per mil. But as you can see at the right of the slide, we also want to work with the Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases, with the Global Soil Partnership, and the International Union of Soil Sciences. So we want to, it wasn't finished. We want to engage in collaboration agreement with various initiatives because we don't want to duplicate, but what we do want is foster synergies, alignment, and co-construction of research. So as Paul says, the Soil Carbon RC is like the research arm of the 4 per mil. Next slide, please. So how did we co-construct this roadmap? Well, I mentioned the first project led by Jean-François, the CIRCASA final event with a lot of stakeholders, more than 370 registered stakeholders with commitments to be part of that RC. Then I organized 2 dedicated workshops before starting the writing of the ORCASA proposal for Europe. And well, we are going on from step to step to be able by August 2025 to really launch and have it the governance in place. And we do that by co-constructing the roadmaps through online cafes, world cafes, where we want to discuss with the community how we get organized. And we will pre-launch the soil carbon ISC during the Soil Mission Week in Madrid in Spain, the 21st of November. Next slide, please. So who is it for? It's for research. So this is clear, but we also need to have funders aboard. So we aim at having public funders on board with us and private funders. And of course, what we want to do is work for the users, so policymakers, but also farmers, landowners, the private sector, and so on. Next slide, please. This is the provisional governance scheme that is still to be discussed during those online World Cafe. And as you can see, we have a scientific committee that is the one of the FOPEMIL Scientific and Technical Committee. Next slide, please. Next slide. So that's the co-construction schemes. Next slide. I just want to go, next slide, please. I just want to go to the value proposition that we will have. So we will work on knowledge sharing, capacity building, research alignment and calls, and monitoring, reporting and verification harmonization, which was one of the topics today. Next slide, please. Here, I just want to mention that within our online platform, well, yesterday someone cited one of the outcomes of that science-based impact information we are producing through artificial intelligence and review of reviews that are published in the press. Next slide, please. I just show that, you know, most of you know it, and especially the person from the Heartfulness Institute this morning, since it's a publication issued from CESAP by Pete Smith and companions. Next slide, please. I just want to talk about MRV harmonization, since this was the topic this morning. And we have just finished a review of existing monitoring, reporting and verification schemes that are internationally existing. And what we want to work on is what was said just previously, is really to work on an harmonized system internationally. And for that, we also develop some tools. And this is why we will provide an MRV framework using remote sensing and models, as was presented this morning. So I think we can have some more discussion later on. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And we are proud to share with ORCASA our STC and being able to not to duplicate. It was said several times this morning, we don't have to duplicate. We have to collaborate and create synergy when we can find them. It's so important. Thank you again. So the next speaker was supposed to be Professor Nandasiri Veerasinghe from University of Ruuna in Sri Lanka. Well, unfortunately, he's in the plane at the moment, so it's difficult to have an online connection, even though it's possible so in some plane, but not this one. So he sent us his presentation, so we will attach the presentation to the report of this conference, and anyway, it will be available for all. And well, I work in the University of Ruuna in Sri Lanka for 2 years, so Professor Veerasinghe was one of my professors for my PhD, so I'm a little bit sad that he could not join, but well, that's life. So next speaker will be Dr. Tika Bahadur Karki, Senior Scientist, Chief of the National Agronomy Research Center, Nepal Agricultural Research Council, President of the Agronomy Society of Nepal. So I think we have the presentation.
Yeah. Namaste, everyone. This is Tika Karki from Nepal. Presently, I'm working for Nepal Agricultural Research Council as an agronomist. Next slide, please. Okay, we have three major ecozones: mountain, hill, and terai. Next, sir. This is our average annual main rainfall map of Nepal. You can see over here. Yeah, a brief about Nepal. What is the land use system? What is the land cover? That has been mentioned over here, and picture that map also reveals the same data over here. Next slide, please. Okay. Similar is the case over here. These statistics has been mentioned, and with through figure as well as from the text. Next, please. Soil sustainability is vital to preserve this biodiversity, as soil provide various ecosystem functions, services, as we all know that this picture. Next, please. You can see over here the regional assessment of soil change in SCA, the organic carbon change. It seems that we have marked over here that there is a very huge gap of soil organic carbon that needs to be addressed in near future. Next, please. Yeah, this table shows the soil organic carbon stocks in tons per hectare in some Asian countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, and Nepal. You can see over here. Okay, next, please. In our case, Nepal's soil organic carbon concentration map shows the we are very deficient in major agricultural croplands of terai and mid-hills, but a bit higher in the higher Himalayan region. As you know that the region of low high organic carbon in the high hills is mainly a slow mineralization process. We have some soil threats that are common in, I think, in SAARC countries, and I have mentioned over here for mid hills, we have mainly slopy terrains, and in terai we have a bit plain lands, and even though we have some soil-related problems, I have mentioned over here. Yeah, there were almost 60 moderate resolution imaging spectrodiameter MODIS fire alerts reported between 12th of September. That is for one year period only. We had reported 60 MODIS fire alerts in Nepal. That has been increasing, especially in the forest areas. Next. Yeah, landslide, as we are experiencing every day during the monsoon season, mainly June, July, August. Next, please. Similar is the case that we are using our prestigious and precious organic matter for our fuel consumption. Next, please. In terai area, especially after having combined harvester, we are having problem of that residue burning, especially for rice residue burning. Status of soil organic carbon matter, we had this much sample from 5,718. We received that from this figure shows that 44.47% low and 40.89% medium and only around 15% high. We have some national policies, and I have mentioned very few over here. We have organic and biofertilizer working guidelines implemented only in 2012, organic fertilizer subsidy directives 2012, organic fertilizer subsidy directives for Prime Minister Agriculture Modernization Project 2016. In these activities, 50 to 75 subsidy given in organic fertilizer in order to promote organic farming. Major breakthrough is ADS, that is 2016 to 2025, includes soil organic matter as an important sustainability indicator in EST vision relevant. Yeah, we can see over here, we have from ADS, it has given us the target of having 4% in the upcoming 20 years, that is 2035. So it's very, I think it is one of the Herculean tasks for us. What we are doing in order to go for to achieve the goal of ADS, we are having we had one very good successful project that was from Helvetas, Nepal, jointly with Soil Management Directorate, and it was from 1999 to 2014. And yes, we have gained some remarkable findings over here. Next, please. These are some of the promoted technology from SSMP. Next, please. Yes, same is the case here. So very recently, UNDP has launched Developing Climate Resilience Livelihood in the Vulnerable Watershed in Nepal, that is 2020 to 2024. Water source protection, catchment pond production, control trench construction, and conservation farming. That's mainly related for the carbon farming. Yeah, what we are doing in Nepal, this one is for improved cattle set and improved manuring, sun hemp. Next, please. Green manuring. Next, please. Especially from NARC, these are some of the technologies that are being promoted for the farmers. Next, please. Yeah, this one is for charcoal. Next, please. This one is for direct seeded rice under conservation agriculture based cropping system. Across all NARC stations, we have a mandate of producing source seed from conservation agriculture technologies. Next, please. Next, please. Similar is the case. Next. You can see from this figure that how much we have achieved in increasing the organic matter content from our experiment. Next, please, ma'am. Go to the end, I think. Yeah, these are some of the technologies under conservation agriculture. And yeah, under agroforestry, farming systems, or yes, this one is agromet advisory bulletin. This one is the very basic need for conservation agriculture to be promoted. Some of the challenges that we have. Next, please, ma'am. Yeah, yes, we have this much challenge, and this much is our biomass, and how we can achieve that goal is our major challenge for us. Next,
can you
please,
go to the conclusion, please?
Yeah, this is the way forward. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very sorry to hurry you. All the presentation will be there. Of course, I guess also it's very frustrating for the speakers not to be able to get some question and answer. You will have the break also to socialize and make some networking, as we said correctly, to ask questions to the speaker. Thank you very much. So the next speaker is Professor Ashraf Ali Biswas, Dean Faculty of Food Science and Technology in Bangladesh. And he will make his presentation on soil beneficial organism, beneficial for ruminant in GHG emission. So, Mr. Dean. Right, you can start. You can have the floor, 5 minutes.
Honorable Chair and dear scientists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Dr. Ashraf Biswas from Bangladesh. I am animal nutritionist. I have done some research work on methane mitigation from the animal, but animal feed comes from the grasslands. So the grasslands is very much related to the animal methane mitigation. So my title of the project, the beneficial organism, which is beneficial for the ruminal methane mitigation. So I have done some of the research work. One of these, that the beneficial organism which is beneficial for the soil, and that is similar beneficial for the ruminal methane mitigation. At first, I want to say something about my country, my country in Bangladesh. Next slide. Yes, and it's agricultural country. You know that Bangladesh has 3 main components in our agricultural. That's crop, livestock, and fisheries. Next. And our habitat, you know that the food is our in breakfast, rural area, semi-urban and urban area. I just want to show the picture. I don't want to discuss that one. All of you know that one in our country. In case of lunch, as this Kanashanti Venom lunch, we can see the rural area and the dinner like that same thing in our country. Now I want to go to my main focus. So what I have identified, the microorganism, which is beneficial for the soil, and same as that microorganism is beneficial for the ruminal methane mitigation. That is my target, and that research work I have done. I have just say one thing. Next slide. My research work has done in my university's research farm, that is Chittagong, that is the Chattogram Veterinary and Animal Science University. I belongs to that university, and I have done that research from there. Next, please. And for your kind information, for ruminal methane mitigation, estimation is a very costly method. You know, the main method, the golden method, is the chamber method, number one. Second one, developed by the USA scientist Peterman, that's the green feed method. Then packed accumulation chamber method, and last one, the ABC method. I have developed, my research group developed that method, ABC method. That is very simple, very cost-effective method, ABC method. I have done my research work done that one. Just I want to one slide more. So this is my next one. Next one. Just I have no. Next, go there. No. Back. This one. From the grassland, I have used that beneficial organism, and I have done the research work, and on the research, the methane emission decreases on the basis of live weight, 7.37 liter per kg of body weight in case of control group, but in my treatment group, the methane emission was 5.57 liter per kg body weight. Next slide. Okay, so the conclusion is that in my research work, I have reached this situation that around 25% methane emission decrease is possible from my intervention. So last one. So my future research work identified organism that I have already identified to use that one in grasslands, grass and animal to estimate greenhouse gas. Next one. So thank you all. I want to cooperate all of you. I want to get a cooperation who are interested to make research work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. You were even shorter than 5 minutes. You have more time. Yeah, you're right. I think it's important to work also on the animal part, because the cattle is shown as one of the main problem of the emission in CH4, and as well as rice. So the Asian and Pacific region are very well concerned by those two subjects, and need to concentrate on that also to show the rest of the world that it's possible to reduce emission. Not only store carbon in the soil, but reducing emission. This is the first thing we have to do. So the last speaker for that sub-session will be Dr. Jasmine Houdin, Professor, Department of Soil, Water and Environment of the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. So please, Doctor, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning. My presentation title, Effects of Peanut Residues on Soil Quality. Next, please. I am from Bangladesh. This is the geolocation of Bangladesh. It is one of the most important deltas of the world: Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna. Next, please. So, soil organic carbon status in Bangladesh. All the red colored spots are very deficient, very low contents of organic matters. So most in Bangladesh, about 70% soils are deficient in organic carbons. Next slide, please. This is a research publication of my works, which was published in the Journal of Environmental Management. In that paper, I have done a carbon dynamics in the agricultural soils of Bangladesh following more than 20 years of land use intensification. In that paper, it was shown that a comparison of the SOC, soil organic carbon, in 2012 and 1990s, data historic level data change comparisons showed that soil organic carbon declined significantly across the Ganges and Brahmaputra alluviums, and specifically the soil organic carbons declined more significantly at the higher level sites or highland sites. These are the problems related to soil organic carbon in Bangladesh. So next, please. In this, some major challenges I need to mention. Low organic carbon contents in the soils of Bangladesh. Monocropping is getting higher. There is rice cropping. Low residual input with higher cropping intensities without any fallow barriers. Soil pH is becoming acidic. As such, climate change and food security issues are immense at present in Bangladesh. Next, please. So in these aspects, I have taken a research experiment. I am just highlight the experiments. Two objectives have been taken in this research to evaluate the effects of peanut-treated soils residues on soil quality and bioresource management, and recommendation policies to adopt soil health restoration. Next, please. So methodology, we have 7 pot experiments in my university, which were designed as control with azula, grass, water hyacinth, peanut, azula with water hyacinth, peanut with grass. So with the 7 pot experiments, in that these are the initial soil parameters, soil quality parameters. Next, please. These are the carbon nitrogen ratio in the residues. Next, please. So here I have done next, please. Also, this is the soil pH. 1 year experiments, we have seen that soil pH initially it was 4.53, and when it was peanut residual treated soils, the pH raised to 6.14. It is about neutral. Next, please. Soil pH and the soil organic carbon, it was 0.30 at the initial level. After 12 months, it was 0.77. And then next, please. The soil parameters like soil nitrogen also increased from 0.082 to 0.21. And next, please. And the soil moisture level also increased from initial level to 5% about. And then next, please. The soil cation exchange capacity also increased from 23 milli equivalent per 100 gram to 36 milli equivalent per 100 gram. Next, please. So we have seen that soil quality parameters, physicochemical parameters increased due to the application of peanut treated soils. And then this is a microbial experiment and a bacterial colony count growth. We have seen that peanut treated soils have more sporous bacteria. Next, please. So we can see that about 80 times porous bacteria increased in peanut treated soils. So peanut treated soils enriched microbial activity with bacterial colonization. Next, please. And then I have done a statistical analysis, also NOVA analysis. All parameters increased. The soil physiochemical parameters increased with the in the peanut treated soils. Next, please. Next, please. So recommendation, the adoption and extension of peanut in the cropping pattern would be an important option of reducing input cost, especially for nitrogen fertilizers for the small scale farmers. It is found that soil organic carbon storage can be increased at 0.3% level, 0.3% level annually in agricultural soils with peanut cultivation under crop diversification program. So it is suggested to implement policy on 4 per 1,000 initiative as outlined by UN resolution regarding Bangladesh or similar climatic zones to sustain soil and food security. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you
very much. Thank you. And you're right, it's very important, this aspect of how we can change for biological fertilizer, like the one in nitrogen with legumes. And also, that was a question of the previous presentation about the subsidy to the mineral fertilizer. I mean, how we can replace that by subsidize the organic fertilizer or the legumes in the rotation. Thank you very much. So it's come the end of the second subsession, and we are starting the third subsession. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to Professor Jagdish Kumar Lada. It's adjunct professor, Department of Plant Science, UC Davis University, USA, member of the STC of the 4 per Mil initiative. So he will make a presentation on carbon and nitrogen management for climate resilient crop production and UN SDGs achievement.
Thank you, Paul.
JK. The floor is yours.
Thank you to Beatrice as well, working hard to keep us on time. While sitting here since yesterday, one of the thoughts coming to my mind, and let me share this and maybe pause a question. How do we organize ourselves to not talk the common elements of the subject? Everybody talks same thing, and I'm including myself. And you will hear some of that, which becomes like a blah, blah, blah at some point. So let's think about it. How do we organize ourselves to do that? So next slide. This is a structure which I have followed in my presentation. You're going too fast. I'll try to finish it in 15 minutes, which you have given to me. So we'll be talking about what are the challenges crop production is facing, which probably you know, and I'm not going to spend too much time. But more important, these two elements, which are so essential for life, carbon, nitrogen, and the good side and bad side. And mapping of sustainable development goals for those carbon and nitrogen flows in agriculture, and mapping of some of the climate smart practices, which we have done recently. I'll share some of that work. And I'm not talking something new here. I think we have been talking since yesterday, and you know already. But let me bring your attention to the last one, number 8, reluctance of youth to take to farming. I have traveled quite a bit in Asia, and I see almost everywhere the farmers, those who are getting old and retiring, the new farmers or their children don't want to come to farming because it's so hard work. Why I'm raising this? All of us have to think in terms of what technology we'll put in place so we can attract farmers to go back to farming. That's very important. Next slide. So there are these two questions which are globally being asked and debated. Can the agriculture has capability to meet the food needs of 8 to 10 billion people? And the answer is definitely yes, it's possible. Second question is more debatable. Can we do this without compromising environmental integrity and public health? And there is a jury out there. Nobody knows whether it's possible at larger scale. Next slide. I asked ChatGPT, which many of you probably have used it, or some of you must have used it. What is climate resilient crop production? I got a very good definition, actually, which is shared by many experts. It refers to the ability of agriculture systems to withstand and adapt the challenges posed by climate change while maintaining or increasing agriculture productivity, ensuring food security, and it involves implementation of climate smart practices and technologies and strategies. Next slide, please. But I think the goal of our crop production should be these 5 important aspects. Increase productivity and financial return. Let me tell you, no farmer will accept any technology if it's not economical. Farmer is a very good economist, and that's something very important. Lower the greenhouse gas emission, soil health and soil fertility, and carbon, which is the backbone of soil fertility. And I'll share my views about that a little later. How we promote biodiversity as a whole, and as much as possible, system is resilient to climate change. Next slide. So after water and energy, nitrogen and carbon are very, very important. They are more or less essential. You have it in breakfast, lunch, dinner. And they have 2 sides of the coin. They are essential for daily life, but there is a bad side also, which is environmental damage. So for last 40, 50 years, or even earlier in agriculture, the challenge has always been how we achieve a balance between our needs and environmental protection. Next slide. So carbon starts with what we call carbon dioxide fixation, photosynthesis, very important biological process. And the other one, nitrogen, it starts with nitrogen fixation, which makes nitrogen availability in our agriculture system. And if we want to increase those 2 processes, very, very important biological processes, we try to enhance photosynthesis and enhance nitrogen fixation. Of course, you can also tweak here and there. Photosynthesis and nitrogen fixation include legumes in the system, but I think breakthrough will come if we can engineer rice, for example, C4 rice or wheat, and nitrogen fixing rice as well. So these are 2 what we call sequestration processes, photosynthesis and nitrogen fixation. But then those 2 elements, they are not completely recycled. That's why they are very unique. You have respiration, combustion, methanogenesis, and nitrogen is released from nitrification, denitrification. So we try to develop methods to mitigate, crop to mitigate and adapt. And soil becomes very important. How do we maintain soil quality? Let me tell you, in most cases, increasing soil carbon is not easy. It's very, very difficult. But that may not be important, actually. The soil dynamic quality is very important, because that's how the nutrient release and productivity depend on that. So soil quality, earlier it was carbon-nitrogen ratio, but now nitrogen-lignin ratio is, next slide, please. This has been a dream of all scientists to convert rice, wheat to like C4 photosynthesis, like maize, or nitrogen-fixing rice, legumes. And we call man and moon projects. Nothing impossible, biologically, definitely possible, and a lot of good work is going on. Next slide. And this, there are these 3 greenhouse gases. They have different global warming potential. Nitrous oxide is 300 times more than carbon dioxide. Next slide. And we also know, believe it or not, all 17 development goals, we looked at it, they are tightly linked to carbon and nitrogen. And so very, very important in relation to sustainable development goals. Next slide. List of so-called climate smart practices. And we have analyzed those practices in this recent paper, which we have written together with Jot et al. And I highlighted this in red color. One is conservation agriculture, and other one is nitrogen management. These are what I call it low-hanging fruits in terms of getting benefits, in terms of environmental benefits, and avoiding residue burning, and crop rotation optimization, and nitrogen management. Next slide. So this is how we have mapped these practices. A practice, ability to mitigate greenhouse gas emission, and also increase soil carbon stock. And that's what we call it, 2 together, soil organic carbon sequestration balance. And then what are other benefits in terms of productivity, biodiversity, and resilience to climate change? We added one more carbon credit eligibility. We would like farmers to get some benefit, get some carbon credits. A lot of companies, those are producing more greenhouse gases, they are buying these credits to offset their carbon emissions, but not all practices will be eligible for carbon credit. Next slide. This is a bit crowded slide. I won't spend much time, but let me show you, for example, land leveling, which is a kind of entry point, very important, but it may or may not change carbon stocks, may reduce greenhouse gas emission indirectly from water use efficiency, and that's why it's not be carbon credit eligible. But then whole conservation agriculture, crop rotation optimization, they will definitely be. Next slide. Let me show you two very important results from some of our multi-location trials we did in conservation agriculture. I call it carbon farming. So what you have on y-axis is grain energy yield, which is actually converting grain yield of different crops, rice, wheat, maize, potato, legumes, to grain energy, to not just have oranges and apples, and homogenize those units. On the z-axis is net income, which is what farmers interested. And x-axis is global warming potential intensity. You see inverse relationship. And what it means, you can get high yield and income with less global warming potential intensity. I think that's what the message I want to give it to you. Next slide. Okay, this is something, Paul, it's my last slide. This is based on experience of not only myself, but several other people, those who have been working on nitrogen for many, many years. Somehow we will have to maintain soil nitrogen base, both available and total. You see in the left side of the panel. And then you try to target Ymax, which is maximum yield, with the amount of nitrogen which is feasible. And you have those 2 points, A and B. You get same yield with A and B, so you should go for A. And then you have better supply and demand. How we do it? System optimization, good agronomy, conserve soil nitrogen and biological nitrogen fixation, which actually replenishes soil nitrogen pool, minimize soil disturbance, avoid soil and wetting and drying cycles, dry fallow, avoid, practice crop residue. It has to be good quality residue. And as I said, it's not carbon nitrogen, but a lignin nitrogen ratio. And no overuse or misuse of nitrogen. We see lots of areas in northwestern India, in China, misuse of nitrogen, I call it. Multiple splits in order to synchronize demand and supply, and deep place as much as possible nitrogen. That's it. Thank you, Paul. I hope I did it in 11 minutes.
You're just perfect, GK. No problem. Thank you very much. I think it sets the scene, I mean, also very importantly, on this scientific evaluation of practice such as biochar, crop residue use, and etc. We need to improve all what we have done by the past. And agronomy is not, I would say, is not a true science. In fact, it's just working with biology sometimes make us humble. We have to consider that. Okay, so next presentation. So then we will have Mr. Stéphane Demel, consultant, Fandem Consulting Belgium, and Community Biomass Indonesia, on community scale rice straw gasification in Indonesia to benefit soil, people, and the environment. Mr. Demel, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. So Beatrice, we can already go to the next slide. Thank you. So I think every one of you has seen the photo on the left side. It's India Gate in Delhi, and you can barely see India Gate because there is so much pollution going on. I've been in India for the first time 5 years ago, and I experienced the pollution, and I was surprised to learn that actually a significant part of the pollution comes from crop burning, straw burning, and stubble burning in Punjab region. And so stay on the side. So last year I did research on energy transitions in Southeast Asia, and I traveled a lot by train. And this was a picture that I've seen very often throughout Southeast Asia. And I was wondering, okay, if it's so harmful, and also it's a lost opportunity because all the carbon and all the energy is gone with the burning of the straw. So why aren't there more alternatives for the farmers? And I was wondering, what can we do about it? And the more and more I digged into this topic, I figured out, okay, actually it's a quite complex problem, and it's not really straightforward, and there are no universal solutions to this problem. So next slide, please. So we thought, what could we do about it? Together with a group of students from the Indonesian organization, Society of Renewable Energy, we developed a solution that we would like to implement now, and we think that has the potential to be one of the best management practices in some of the specific contexts. So what we want to do is to take the rice straw, to put it into a gasification reactor. In the gasification process, we receive biochar. Biochar will be fed back into the farms and increase and enhance the soil properties. And we also receive the syngas, and the syngas we apply in brick kilns. Next slide, please. So we look at the project from different dimensions, and the complexity arises actually from integrating those different dimensions and also the barriers that they bring and also the opportunities that they bring. So starting from technology, we have the constraints related to the reactor design, selection and implementation. How do we do the feedstock reception, feedstock treatment and storage? Then how do we treat the products that we receive from the process? We have to look at health, safety, and environmental considerations, and also to align the use of the syngas with the production pattern of the gasification machine. Then on the cultural side, we need to look at who are the project stakeholders, what are their cultural dispositions, and then based on those cultural dispositions, also make a storytelling approach and a communication approach to see which is the language in which we can talk to the people. And finally, which is most interesting for this event, is the agricultural part, looking at what is the way of working of the farmers in the field right now, and how does our project impact the way of working? Because if there's a lot of change in the way of working, there might be some reluctance by the farmers. Then also, what is the impact of on the yield? If we feed back the biochar, so also how can we achieve the highest impact, positive impact on the yield for the farmers, so that they have the highest positive outcome of the project? And also overall, what is the environmental impact? Because it's quite tricky to measure the overall environmental impact in terms of GHG emissions, but also in terms of biospheres, soil organic carbon content, and so on. And this is also a point that we have to look at in this project. Next slide, please. And this project will not be beneficial in all different contexts. So therefore, there are some sites where it's more beneficial, some sites where it's less beneficial. We had to look, where do we find the most beneficial sites? And therefore, we put together 9 different selection criteria. And on the selection criteria, we included where do they actually do the crop burning, where do we have the sufficient straw quality, where do we have the off-takers for the syngas, for example. And in terms of agriculture, also what is the soil quality. The location that we finally selected is dominated by agrisoils, Lewis soils, and Canby soils. They are generally rather acidic. So therefore, for the biochar, we can expect a positive impact on the soil stabilization, acidity regulation. Next slide, please. So therefore, our project, we expect positive benefits in terms of air quality, soil quality, and rice yields, some additional income for the farmers. So we expect to reduce the deforestation by replacing the firewood in the kilns, and also have a positive impact on the climate change. Next slide, please. So currently the project is in implementation. We expect it to be up and running in November, and we welcome your feedback and also food for thoughts for a successful implementation. So thanks for the attention.
Thank you very much. Very promising. I think with all what we have seen about the way the people are burning the straw and the rice husk in the field, I mean, it could be a good opportunity to take this carbon, put it back in the soil. Thank you very much. So let's have a presentation by Mr. Rao Saheb Kote, Chief Thematic Program Executive, BIF Development Research Foundation of India on soil health and carbon sequestration, the BIF Development Research Foundation experience. So, member of the 4 per mil.
Yeah.
So, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. BIF adopted Gandhian approach of rural prosperity with emphasis on community-led approaches aimed at integrated crop livestock farming systems and implement nature positive actions. We have next please. BIF programs are spread across India in 14 states in almost 95,000 villages. And major components of development are livestock development, sustainable natural resource management and climate actions, and then agri-hortiforestry model. This is this is very good approach for carbon sequestration, which is called as WADI. It has been very well adopted by the farmers, small farmers and marginal farmers across India. Then we have cross-cutting themes. Next one. This is briefly about the landscape restoration approach, in which we have a very systematic approach of studying the landscapes, identifying the activities which are required for land restoration through geohydrological studies and community-led survey, various kinds of social surveys and also technical surveys, and identify the vulnerability of land degradation and provide treatments based on soil protection, mainly for soil protection, then runoff control measures and water management. These are the 3 major important components we have implemented in various landscape and various approaches, region-specific approaches we have developed. In Karnataka, we have a farm pond, recharge farm pond model, in which one excess water of one pond goes to the next. In Andhra Pradesh, we have traditional tank rehabilitation approach. In Maharashtra, spring shade management approach. Therefore, the different kind of a land restoration approaches based on the principles of watershed management, we have implemented in various parts of the country. We have a soil health management approach. Even Navinji is here. We have integrated soil health management approach for the sustainable soil management, mainly improving the soil health for the sustainable livelihood and at the same time the benefits of the environment. This is very innovative approach supported by GIZ also, and also here Anirudh Kenny is also here. He has also studied our few of silvipasture development and also soil health management landscapes, and they have found that the carbon sequestration levels are high, and farmers can also apply for carbon credits also. Therefore, this approach of soil fertility management mainly through solutions mainly solutions of organic and biofertilizers. Means if we see interculturing, intercropping, then green manuring and soil test based approach, means we initially sensitize farmers for the soil test and identify the nutrients in the soil, and then based on these nutrients develop practices that will require low cost solutions at local levels. Next, please. This is one of the important approach we have identified. We have formed a farmer producer organization, and in the Vidarbha we found that there is a lot of cotton residue burning. Therefore, to address the issue of cotton residue burning, the TAAS farmer producer organization collects cotton residues by paying farmers 4 rupees per kg, and that collected residue is converted into the biochar through kilns. and then it is processed at farmer producer level, and by adding vermicompost, equal quantities of vermicompost, biochar, and then beneficial microbes, it is added back into the soil. Means BIOF has an approach of circularity. The same approach of enterprise development, that is bioprom, means it is approach of integrated renewable energy and sustainable agriculture, in which means the slurry from biogas is separated into water and cow dung, and then cow dung cakes are prepared, and rock phosphate is added into it, and that is applied into the soil. Likewise, we have enterprise initiatives in soil health management. Next, please. Then the important approach is about biodiversity conservation. It is mainly agro-biodiversity. Means local seed savers are promoted to conserve the genes. You know, you might be aware about Rahibhai Popere, who was awarded as a Padma Shri award by the government of India. She was one of the lead seed saver supported by the BIOF. Next, please. This is one of the important tree-based farming approach. It is called as Wadi. It is a 1 acre plantation in which fruit and forestry trees along the borders of the that particular land parcel, and promoting practices of short gestation crops, interculture, and soil and moisture conservation within that particular landscape. It has a good potential of carbon sequestration. This we have promoted in India in 14 states of India. Almost 89,000 hectares, more than 89,000 hectares area is covered under Wadi by BIOF. Next, please. Then silvipasture development. This is commonly done by BIOF in Rajasthan. Next, please. This is what I was talking about, the bioprom model. This is ICRISAT model. Once there is a unit of 100 participants coming together, they can form a FPO, and then a bioprom enterprise can be developed to generate organic fertilizer that can replace the single superphosphate. This is brief about the BIOF interventions in carbon sequestration for soil health management and also for tree-based farming. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There are many solutions. This Wadi we already heard about with the presentation of the head of BIOF. We had it also in Bonn long time ago. But it's still going on, and I'm glad that we are talking, because we are in India. It's normal to talk about it. So to end this subsession, I would like to call Dr. Sai Bhaskar Reddy Naka, expert in biochar in Telangana, India. So he would like to make a small speech to us. So, sir, you have the floor.
Here is the scientific evaluation of biochar and crop residues as practiced. So there is a difference between the standardization of biochar. I'll speak mostly on biochar. We are having several standards, but there is no common standard globally, which is accepted. And many standards are evolving. That's fine. But ultimately, the user should also understand when they are practicing what is happening to their field or their crop, or what result they are getting. So do we have some standards where they can map all this, or do they think like a miracle that is happening? So it's not a miracle, it's science. So biochar is like coral reef, and biochar is like a rechargeable battery for the soil. I'm using some common jargon so that it is understandable for everybody. And crop residue, yes, definitely it can become a source for creating biochar as well as to recharge biochar. So we need the food for biochar also, so that other life can exist there. And all these practices are happening in the open system. So lab to land, when we say, lab is completely different, where the universities, institutions, or higher level organizations, they can have some systems, and these are very costly, actually. So land means ultimately when we have really adopted. And I'm always puzzled when we are defining a biochar of the highest quality. This much carbon should be there. It should be at this temperature. It should be like this. Perfect. But when you are applying in the soil, that is a minuscule. And your soil is not the perfect soil anyhow. It is the most polluted nowadays. So when you're putting this much highest quality biochar in that soil, what is happening there matters more than the source of your biochar. So this consciousness should be there. Then optimum application standards also we have to evolve. Otherwise, the people with money, they say 10 tons, 1 ton, 100 tons, whatever they want, they use. And they tell, but it is not a one-time application biochar. The things have changed since several years, and we need to change. So it's a slow process. Incremental application is also suggestible. So these things need to be evolved, and then it's also process-related thing. Biochar is not the end, actually. So when it is applied, its interaction with various other things. And we need to, it's a community adaptation and socio-ecological issues are there, even carbon sequestration, climate change, many things are there. So it's a integrated science actually. That's why probably somewhere within agriculture, the charcoal jargon was missing in the textbooks up to university till recently. Maybe now they have incorporated. But it's an integrated science involving community scientists, soil scientists especially, including precision agriculture. Because when we apply this at a point, and because it is going to stay there for say 1,000 or 10,000 years or even more, at least part of it, then definitely have to map it and fix it. So applying the GIS, remote sensing, and all these things will come into picture. And ultimately, what I say is there are multiple uses actually. Soil is the ultimate thing. Whether we cremate a body, ultimately your charcoal and ashes going to reach the same soil. Or I have created a just Buddha biochar. Ultimately, where it will go to the soil. I have done biochar bricks used in the construction. Where that will go? Someday it will go to the soil. So finally, it is ending in the soil. So recharge, reuse, recycle. These concepts also we should understand in the context of biochar. Then like applications, many farmers will ask me, I am going for plantation. Already I planted, where I should apply? See, you take the medicine inside or you just apply on the face? Because where your roots are so deep in plantations, you are supposed to begin your process of application right from the pit treatment also. You have not done that. It's okay. Outside also it will work. So point application, line application, or area application, these are very things. Even mulch, as a mulch also we can apply. Recently somebody was telling my mango plantations are having some termite problem. I said, apply the paste as paint, the biochar, paint to the plant. It will repel them. So like that, simple solutions are also there, including some of the exclusive applications, like you can create a, like in polyhouses, high-end farming, you can create exclusive beds, the media, biochar is the media for cultivation, like rooftop gardens or even hydroponics. You can integrate in many things. So these things are already there, even vertical gardens, even flotigation, the jargon I have given, where you can cultivate crops on the water using the biochar. So like this, we have umpteen things. So when I started in 2005, the biochar in India, there were very few universities abroad. They were working in India. It has not started much. We used to call terra preta. It's a long journey. But my testing was from the field level only. We observing the height of the plant, the number of flowers, how many seeds they germinated, and the girth of the plant. You uprooted few plants and saw the roots, how they are, or rhizobium, how it is there. So all these observations which are very much evidence-based, and even a person who is applying can pursue and see by himself. This mattered the most for me to be a successful in this initiative on biochar. I have written a book called Biochar Culture. I don't want to just call biochar like agriculture, horticulture, everywhere it is culture. So this is also culture. So it's an integrated approach. So there are umpteen blends that we can adopt and reduce the cost of biochar also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Last message, very important for this afternoon. We really need you this afternoon. Do not escape. This afternoon is a very important part of the conference because we will break out in 2 groups and we will work on all what we want to have in the roadmap. So there will be a guided reflection. This will be the basement for the whole roadmap. So we need you. Thank you.